the Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network presents Worldview Media Podcast, where Gordon and Joyce Runyon view popular media through the lens of the biblical five-point covenant model to help believers appreciate and apply principles of exciting narrative and engaging storytelling.
Coming to you live from inside the Liberty Bell. It's the Worldview Media Podcast. Part of the Reconstructionist Reformed Podcast Network. Reconstructionist Radio Reformed Podcast Network. Your one-stop shop for all your dominionizing needs. The Worldview Media Podcast. Here to help you kick off your weekend. Maybe a family movie night is in store.
Maybe.
I'm here, and my name is Gordon Runyon. And with me...
hanging out inside a bell.
Hanging out inside a bell. It's my co-host, Miss Joyce. Hello.
Hello.
And our other co-host, Jordan.
Hello.
Hello. And we decided to take a blast from the past, and we're going to review the show National Treasure.
Yeah.
It's easy to find. It's always on somewhere. And they play it on TV quite a bit, I feel like. And
yeah, it comes on sometimes.
yeah, so we watched a DVD, and it's Nicolas Cage at his cagey best.
Yes.
All right, so to kick off the plot of this movie and overall feel for the movie, we have Nicolas Cage playing a man named Benjamin Franklin Gates.
Uh-huh.
And the thing is that the Gates family has a long history with Freemasonry. And there's a tale that's been passed down from generation to generation about how the last surviving guy who knew anything about this gigantic Templar treasure died and passed on a clue to the first Gates guy. Well,
yeah.
Maybe not the first, but great-great-great-great-grandpa.
Yeah.
Who was not a Freemason.
No, he didn't know anything. And then, but he got the clue.
Yeah.
And so, generations have been searching for this treasure. And the thing about the treasure is it's connected with the Knights Templar. And they specified it was during the First Crusade that they came across this treasure underneath Solomon's temple.
Yeah.
Must have been the place where it used to be. There was no actual temple during the crusade.
Yeah.
Solomon's wasn't there anyway. And so they find this gigantic treasure that like spans back to ancient Egypt and stuff like that. And then over the centuries it grew, and they had like Inca and Aztec treasure, and just from wherever it happened to
There
be.
was treasure.
Yeah.
And so the Templars, the Freemasons, decided at some point that the treasure was too big for any one person to have, any one king to be in control of, and the plan was to hide the treasure. And so they hid it, but they hid it while maintaining some clues so that it wouldn't be lost forever if somebody could figure out the clues.
Yeah.
And so that's the plot of the movie, that now this Benjamin Gates is on the trail of the treasure. And the whole movie is really just him pursuing one clue after another.
Yeah.
Now, apparently at some point then in colonial days, the Templar treasure gets moved to colonial America.
Yeah.
And so all the clues now have to do with that era of American history.
Right. Because that's who was making the clues.
Yeah.
Well, that's who was hiding it.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
making and hiding. And so one of the big plot points is that there's a treasure map in invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence. And so the only way they can get to that treasure map is by stealing the Declaration. And now you've got the FBI and everybody else after you. And so, and that there are also unscrupulous bad guys looking for the same treasure at the time that Gates and his friends are looking for it. And so it's a race, a three-way race, really. The FBI doesn't know anything about the treasure, but they're after Gates and they're after the bad guys. And the bad guys are after the treasure and after Gates, and so hilarity ensues.
Well, Gates only gets the Declaration because the other guy is going to get it.
Right. He steals it to protect it. He knows the bad guys are going to get it and probably destroy it in the process of trying to figure out the clues.
Right.
And he did inform the authorities.
Yeah, he was always straightforward with the authorities, except that,
Nobody
he tried
believed him.
not to get caught.
Well, he went and told them someone's going to steal it, and then nobody believed him.
Right. So it's their fault, really.
Yeah, it's all about the government.
Right.
Not listening to the people.
Yeah, not listening. Being
Okay,
ineffective.
so we just watched this, so give me some overall thoughts. What worked, what didn't? Overall, what's your feeling?
Well, I thought it was pretty funny sometimes. That his little buddy Riley is a pretty good little comic relief sidekick character. And he's actually useful, which is nice. Because sometimes the comic relief sidekick character isn't actually that useful. But he, knows how to do things, and he knows stuff, certain information that's important to know, and so I think that's nice. He's pretty fun.
Okay. Alright, so you like the sidekick, but overall...
But overall, well, you asked something that works, and I said that works.
Alright. Well, what about you? Anything?
Well, I think at the time that it was made, probably we were under different safety precautions. I think now a lot of the stuff that they did, you wouldn't be able to do. You wouldn't have access to buildings. You
Was
wouldn't
it
be
pre
able to-
9/11?
No,
I
I don't think so.
You don't think so? I think
It was 2003 or 4, probably,
Oh, okay.
because all the previews before it were movies coming out in 2004.
Oh, yeah. That's probably right. Well, we can
It
look
seemed
it up.
a little lax to me that you could just get into all these buildings and just walk in and not have screens and scans and walk through. But
Well,
maybe you can.
He
I don't
did
know.
walk in with the scan. He had to go in as the guy, and he had the fake pass that the guy looked at, and then he put his thing in there and
And he
through the
switched
scanner
off his
thing.
clothes.
2004 National Treasure.
So
Alright. And it's been played on, satellite TV 2004 times.
Very clever you are.
So your overall was what again? Did I miss it?
No, you didn't miss it. It's a cute little movie.
yeah, I think I'd
It
probably
gives you
overall
some,
give it a B or something.
some
It's not my
history.
favorite movie, but it's kind of fun.
Some history info.
Well,
you know.
history trivia, kind of.
Well, yeah, but, kind of fun.
It's a romp.
It's a romp. It's kind of a summer action film,
Yeah,
except that, it's not. Nobody's getting shot up really, and
yeah.
it's more just chasing and escaping.
Well, it's a Disney movie,
right.
so it's for the kids.
It's not as
For the kids.
violent as a lot of summer action movies can be, but
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not terribly violent. It is exciting though when they get into the final place when they're close to the treasure, and now
Yeah.
they're in this dungeon underneath the
Church.
church, and it's very dangerous and
Rickety.
thrilling.
And old and
Yeah. That's a good time.
I think I'd give it about a B. It's maybe nice to have on in the background or something while you're doing something else. And there are some moments where it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Then they came out with National Treasure 2. No, we didn't watch that.
Yeah.
Not for the review here, but
I was thinking.
does anything strike you as different without watching National Treasure 2 again? It's been forever since we saw it, but...
Well, the mom is in Treasure 2.
Oh, yeah. I think, 2, you have a lot more, like, relationship drama between different people.
Oh, okay.
So, like, the Nicolas Cage guy and his girlfriend are, like, in a rocky period or something,
Yeah,
and then Riley's kind of mad at everybody because they didn't read his book that he wrote about history stuff.
And it's all about what they're doing.
And the mom and the dad are,
Trying to
all
work
divorced
together.
and stuff, trying to work together. So I feel like the second one has a lot more to do with, like, personal conflicts than this one has.
Yeah, and I felt like the second one, the dangerous places that they had to go and stuff they had to survive was very contrived. And
Wasn't as dangerous.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was just a little unbelievable, maybe, that it was so
right. Yeah.
intricate or something. I don't know.
Well, I
So
don't know. This
elaborate
first one,
and
there was
weird. a
a lot of hopping from here to there and having to go there and, up into the icy lands to find the boat and covered under snow.
Well,
and
nobody
ice
ever
and,
meant for the boat to be covered under snow and ice. That's just what happened.
Well, and then how do you find a boat that just happened to get under snow and ice that
Well, you have
starts
to do
everything
research.
else?
Yeah, we missed that part. That was all in the prequel, whatever that is.
And then I thought the opening scene was really interesting with the grandpa and the young boy
Yeah.
and knighting him with the the responsibility
The family
of
responsibility.
this. This falls on you.
Right.
So he must have been an only child.
Yeah.
But I think that really sets up his attitude about this is serious and this is real and this is something to
Yeah,
believe
he
in.
kind of feels the weight of his family's honor on his shoulders. And
Yeah.
his family gets laughed at for being conspiracy theorists and stuff.
Right.
And not taken seriously in the historical scholarship community.
And he seems to really care about the history of the thing,
Right.
Like,
right.
that's always kind of his main driving thing, is that he wants to find it for the sake of its historical value and not really how, like, not the monetary, intrinsic kind of value, but, like, that it's important for, like,
For people,
culture
yeah.
and people and,
Right.
history.
Right. All right. Any other overall thoughts?
Well,
We can take our break if you don't have any.
I guess I have nothing. Jordan, you also have nothing?
I suppose so. I already think I said,
Yeah.
I'd give it about a B. It's a mostly good time.
Yeah, I'd agree with your rating.
All right. So we're all at a B on National Treasure. All right. Well, very good. Let's take our break and we'll come back.
Are you interested in Christian education? Would you like to learn how to be a Christian teacher or how to run your very own Christian school with success? The GCS Apprenticeship Program can help. Learn more on our website at gcsapprenticeship.com.
The Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network brings to you a complete lineup of podcasts where you will hear practical and tactical theology. Our desire is not simply that you consume our shows, but that you also live out your faith in every area of life. We can talk all day long about these things, but if we fail to put them into practice, then we fail as ambassadors of Jesus Christ, our King. Subscribe now to your favorite Reconstructionist Radio Podcast Network shows, or you can subscribe to the Reconstructionist Radio Master Feed, where all of the content we produce, including the audiobooks and audio articles, will pop up as soon as they are available. And don't forget to visit reconstructionistradio.com to volunteer as a narrator or to partner with this ministry financially. May the Holy Spirit stir you into action for Christ and His kingdom.
Ding dong. Just where I am.
In the bell?
Inside the Liberty Bell.
Wait, there were 2 bells.
Whoops, I cracked it.
Oh, no. Now it's ruined.
It'll never ring again. All right. Enough of our skit.
What?
Our skit that we were just doing.
We were improving
Oh, I see.
in a manner related to the whole podcast thing. This is the Worldview Media Podcast.
All right.
And we're talking about national treasure. And it's time for us to talk about worldview issues and what sorts of messages are being preached through this film, this cinematic achievement.
Okay.
So, what do you see as themes, or do any particular messages kind of leap out at you? What was preached here?
Well, I think probably a big one is the sort of the importance of like history and knowing like where you come from and all of that kind of thing. I kind of feel like you see that quite a bit because he gets to the treasure because he knows about his country and all of this founding stuff. So sort of the value of knowing your history kind of comes
But does
up,
he
I
know
think.
that because of the thing with his grandfather where suddenly he's given this responsibility that this is now falling on your shoulders, so you need to remember these things and take them seriously and know them? Or
Well, I'm sure that was part of it. I'm sure that's a big spur for why he learned all that stuff. I would guess that was his motivation in gathering all the information.
But he still had to know it.
Right.
He wouldn't have gotten anywhere if he didn't.
You know, I feel like they treated it more like, I mean, Jordan said that maybe the theme was something about the importance of history, but I felt like there were moments when they treated history like it had religious significance. You know, like the way that they acted like the Declaration of Independence was nearly sacred at times. You know, and when they got in a historical place where the Declaration was signed, even though people are chasing them and stuff, they have to take a moment to just think about how significant it is that this thing that we're holding was signed here in this room, and let's all take a deep breath and just have a moment of silence or whatever. You know, it seemed like there was a little bit of maybe exalting history, almost to the point of being a religious significance.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I think that happens. That's probably true.
What about you?
Well, and then I think, you know, when he's talking to the girl and saying, you know, here's to high treason, and recognizing what the founding fathers did and that it really was an act of treason, but they did it because it was the right thing to do. And so that concept is in there as well. Sometimes the right thing to do is an act of treason, and if it doesn't go right, you could be paying the penalty for that. Yeah. But that there is something about doing the right thing. Now, having said that, how can you determine what's the right thing?
Right. It's chaos. That's a recipe for chaos and anarchy without the law of God. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a standard that will really show you what objective and transcendent righteousness looks like, then if we preach that you should do what you think is right regardless of what the human law says, well, we're preaching anarchy if we don't mean you must follow God rather than follow men. Mm-hmm. And that is what we mean. And I think, you know, whatever the religious commitments of the founders were, and I'm not saying they were all born-again believers or that their theology was great, but they did live in a time where there was cultural Christian consensus in this idea that God's law was superior to man's law, and you couldn't break the one in order to keep man's law.
Well, even in the Declaration, who has given them these rights?
Right.
You know, it wasn't the king, it wasn't their governor, it was God.
Yeah, and then I like the quotation from the Declaration that they used. Mm-hmm. You know, on July 4th, you'll hear the Declaration quoted, but it's just the first line about, we hold these truths to be self-evident, and here are the rights we have. But I think the really culturally shocking line is the one that says, there does come a time when if the government is subverting these rights and not protecting them and trampling on them and making people slaves, then you not only have a right, but you have a duty to cast that government off and fashion a new one that will protect your rights.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a controversial thing. Nobody quotes that anymore, and it was quoted in the movie. I didn't quote it; I just summarized it. But I appreciated that they talked about that, and that they did make that a point in the movie, that in Benjamin Gates stealing the Constitution to protect it, he felt like he was following in the footsteps of founders who knew that they had to disobey in order to protect what needed to be protected.
Right.
So I thought that was a neat message, and I was happy to see that in there. I think the overall message, it feels to me like this whole movie was a paid advertisement for the Masonic Temple. You know, it felt like Masonic Temple propaganda. We're going to have a pledge drive. We're going to get we're going to get a whole new crop of recruits for local Masons, and here's our
so are
movie.
There like requirements to be a Mason, or anybody can be
Well,
a Mason?
you have to be invited, I believe.
Oh.
You can't just go join.
I didn't know if it was like the Daughters of the American Revolution.
No, I think you have to go join. And then, so I thought that was really interesting. And I admit, the first time I saw it, I was like, "Dang, that'd be kind of cool to be part of, be part of this
history.
Like secret society that's got all these noble aims, and you know, you're really the descendants of these knights and stuff. How cool is that?"
Yeah.
So I can see the attraction and how that would fire up your imagination and stuff. And I've always thought that idea of the fictional setup of secret societies that are waging wars that nobody knows about. I've always liked those stories and been attracted to them. But and I know people who are Masons now, and I don't get the feeling that they're in it for the sake of doing anything noble. You know, they're making business connections and networking and
oh my goodness.
Nothing really fun.
right.
Well, you know, you say all those things, and it just reminds me of, you know, that's really what a Christian should be, somebody who's waging war against,
right, yeah,
maybe not quite such a secret society.
No, but if you've got a society that's dominated by lies and by people who hate the telling of the truth and stuff like that, then what should a real Christian church look like? Well, it should look subversive. You know, it should be acting in such a way that the culture says, this is treason. You guys are, you know, and the first Christians weren't put to death because of their religious picadillos. They were put to death because people saw them as subversive to the civil order, to the government order. And I think it's a damning thing to look at the way the evangelical church in America today is generally put up with and ignored by a culture that kills over 1 million babies every year.
Yeah.
And
you mean the church that maybe has an illusionist going? trying to drum up some people walking through the door.
Right.
Because the gospel ain't enough.
Joyce is referring to the fact that a large church in our small town is having a quote-unquote revival, and they've given up. Well, is that the right word? It used to be that churches having revivals would invite in revival preachers.
Uh-huh.
And we all knew that's what was happening.
Yeah.
And then the revival preachers started to be more and more entertainers.
Mm-hmm.
And we could all see that too. And now they've just dropped the whole preacher thing, and they advertise them as great family entertainment. And
because that's what you want at church.
we're not even going to tell you that there might be some preaching in there or something. But, yeah, so in a church, if your culture is killing, 3,000 babies a day in the United States, and it really does beg the question: what do faithful Christians? What should they look like in the midst of that culture? And it should be a subversive, treasonous society. If we're not seen that way, if we're not seen as dangerous or as a threat to the status quo, we're probably not doing stuff right. So we should be a.
Well, I see what you're saying, but I still think you can't just be seen as dangerous and subversive. I mean, you still got to be seen as somebody with integrity and somebody who has standards, and not just
Yeah, but
oh no, there
that's
comes that
what's
crazy
dangerous.
guy.
That's
Well, yeah,
exactly what's
but-
dangerous. So.
But there are dangerous, subversive people out there that aren't Christians, and so I just want to clarify that. We've had some serious things happen in our area recently,
Yeah,
with people
right.
having guns and walking around and being dangerous and subversive, and that's not what you're endorsing.
No, but of course I'm not. I'm not endorsing criminal activity or degenerate behavior, but I am saying that in a culture that does all these things, if the church is not seen as some kind of dangerous institution in the middle of that culture, we're probably not doing things right. If we're just getting along and we're basically friends with the culture that's acting this way, that can't hardly be right, can it? So, a point of trivia I wanted to point out that.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, not trivia.
Because reading about the Templars and their history is a little bit of a. I mean, I've read a few books.
Yeah.
And I've read a few books on how the Templars are involved in, like, a lot of
Treasure of Oak
conspiracy
Island?
theories and stuff like that. I was just going to say, when they open up that giant treasure room at the end of the movie, National Treasure, there's no Holy Grail, there's no Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And you know why that is?
It's because it's in
those
Oak
are
Island.
at Oak Island. That's right.
All right.
As long as you know where it is, it's all right.
We'll never get to it.
We need to get the Gates family to Oak Island.
Well, I still think it's really funny that it's a non-Mason guy that actually solves it all and brings to light the
Just
treasure.
a history guy.
Yeah. But that, it's this big Masonic treasure, and it's somebody that's not a Mason who brings it all to light.
Yeah. It turns out at the end, the plot twist is that the agent that's in charge of tracking down Benjamin Gates is a Freemason himself, and
With a traditional pinky ring.
yeah, and so he knew, without being told about the treasure and what it was, he kind of knew all about it, at least what it was. He didn't know it had been there,
Right.
but you almost got the feeling like he was on the side of protecting this treasure
Yeah.
as well as trying to get the declaration back and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a reveal at the end.
Yeah.
The
That kind of
shocking-
adds a whole
The
new
shocking
dimension.
twist.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, did you see anything else being broadcast? I almost felt like that issue of trying to vindicate my family,
Oh, yeah.
that was a big deal. And really that carries on to the next National Treasure, right? the bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he's trying to do, is vindicate his family.
Right, because he was
from
somehow
history.
tied to Lincoln or something.
Isn't he a descendant of John Wilkes Booth or something like that?
Some co-conspirator or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he, frames the Gates family. It's all very convoluted.
Right.
Puts him in a bad light again.
Again.
They were just getting things going good.
So the interesting question then is to ask, you've got these folks that are really freaked out about history and wanting to vindicate their view of history. And to me, I see a parallel with kind of things going on in the United States now with the whole move to get rid of Confederate statues and stuff, and to erase supposedly we're going to erase the history by getting rid of these statues.
Right.
And what do you do with that argument? And I think, I really think that the biblical view of history is that if you don't see history as the progress of Christian faith over the course of time, you're not viewing it right. You're viewing it as an isolated set of facts and data and trivia, like is in this movie.
Right.
And so I think the only way to really protect history is to interpret it in the light of Scripture and see it, like I said, as the development of Christian faith over time. And when you do that, then I don't think things like statues and sacred sites and all of that, I'm not sure that those are terribly important when you see that history is really about the extension of the kingdom of God, and that's where it's important. So, and it does seem like what the movie is doing and what may be being done in all the history fights that are going around, it almost turns into a tribal thing. It's about vindicating my family over the course of history versus your family over the course of history. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think...
Well, if you're really going to look at the people that any monument is made to, you're going to find that they're flawed.
Sure.
You're going to find that they did things that were wrong and evil, if they wanted to do it or not, because that's the nature of man. You know, we tend to do those things regardless. And so, I mean, how far do you take that with, okay, we'll take down these statues, but we're going to leave these up because they weren't quite as bad? Or, you know, it's just, it seems kind of ridiculous to me.
Well, the whole fight is a little bit ridiculous.
Because then, you know, well, why do we have some things up at the Capitol? You know, those men were slave owners. They were, you know, they weren't always above board in their business dealings.
Or personal dealings.
You know, and so where do you draw the line? Where do you stop that?
Well, what bothers me more, just to get on my hobby horse here, if we're going to
Wait, let's get the horse out.
Oh my. How is this horse going to fit in the bell?
Hobby's a small horse.
I'm surprised it stands up to you so well.
Calm down, Hobby. You talked about the fact that everybody acts shocked when we look back in history, and the heroes that we have were not perfect. We have that going on present day. There are Christians who exalt certain members of the United States government to a level of hero worship, and they're not even dead yet. And they ascribe to them hero status, and they get mad if you question that. And I'm talking specifically about military and the police. The police especially. It shocks me how many Christians are willing to stand up and say police are generally good. What happened to the understanding that there is none good, no, not one? You know.
Yeah.
How does a Christian come to the point of saying that once you've put on a badge and taken an oath and now you have a gun, that suddenly you're good? No, you're not. You're a sinner who now has a badge and a gun, and you should be viewed with a great deal of suspicion, as any person standing next to you with a gun should be viewed. And this willingness to exalt those types and put them on pedestals and get mad if you question them, or get mad if you insult them, or mock them in some way, even if they deserve it. That can't be right. That can't be comporting with the revelation of Scripture. All men are sinners, and the fact that you have a badge and a gun just means you're a sinner with a badge and a gun, which means you should probably be watched more carefully and trusted less even. And so we do the same thing with the monuments and the heroes from history and all of that. But I really feel like if we keep that biblical view of what history really is, the development of Christian faith over the centuries, then does it really matter if we find Noah's Ark? Really, does it matter? No, it doesn't matter to me. And if I never get to go to Jerusalem, and if we never really are sure where the tomb of Jesus was, and I never get to stand in the doorway of that tomb, have I lost something? No, I totally haven't. And I just feel like that's a valid view in terms of history as well. Learn from the history, know it, don't believe lies about it and all that, but if they take down a statue of a guy that I happen to like from history, does that hurt me? I don't think so. So, I don't know. There you go.
There you go.
You're all in stunned silence sitting here.
Ah, yes. I'm still impressed about the horse. Is what it is.
Yeah, it hasn't trotted off yet.
Hobby's a good horse.
Oh, boy.
All right. Well, do y'all have anything else? Any other message come through with National Treasure for you?
Well, I noticed a thing that was not touched on very much, but Nicolas Cage kind of talks about it for a second with his dad about how maybe their real family legacy is sons disappointing their fathers.
Right.
Because, he is doing all this treasure stuff, which is a disappointment to his father, and his father kind of gave up all this treasure stuff, which was a disappointment to his father, and
Right.
so this sort of like this cycle of expectations and not meeting those.
That kind of rang with you?
Well, no, I was just like, ooh, that's savage for him to say. Because it's like he's accepting it, but he's also pointing a finger. And I don't know, it was just this sort of cyclical thing that was interesting to me.
Right.
Well, that just reminds me of the sins of the father going down through the generations, and so I just say, well, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I've always liked the fact that once you come to Christ and once you're in the family of God, there's a sense in which your family history is rewritten.
Yeah.
That
we belong to a different family.
I'm now grafted into a different tree than I was naturally growing out of.
Yeah.
And me, the Gentile, with family from the Scottish Highlands and all that, I get to talk about my father Abraham and what he did, and Father David, and wasn't it great when great-great-grandpa David was the king, and that's all my family, and I'm grafted in, and so that's kind of an interesting note history-wise as well.
Yeah. That
Christ rewrites your family and your past and all that, in a sense.
Well, and history is still an important thing to know. It's important to know your roots and where you come from and what those things mean, especially as a Christian.
Sure, that's right. And it's precisely because we believe that God is in charge of history, and history is not a random collection of events and names and dates and all that. And precisely because of that, we think that there are lessons to be learned from history.
It's a purpose.
In the same way that, an atheist really doesn't have any philosophical reason for doing the scientific method, because because something has worked out this way here doesn't mean you can count on it to be that way later, without a theistic, without a biblical basis for reality. And in the same way, when an atheist looks at history, there can't be any lessons to learn, because it's
meaningless.
Matter bouncing off of matter and for no purpose and stuff like that. So,
Right.
So it's really, history has things to teach the believer, because it is the progress of Christian faith over time.
Wait, I think I've heard that maybe once or twice.
All right. Well, I don't have anything else. What do y'all got?
I guess that's it for me.
Well, I'm getting on this horse thing and getting out of here.
Riding off into the sunset. There goes Mama Joyce on Hobby the Horse.
It's too bad you can't hear the clip-clops walking away.
We need to get us a coconut and cut it in half.
Who's banging the coconuts?
Next week. Tune in for
Another podcast.
and maybe Hobby comes back.
All right, y'all. It's time to say goodbye. Go out there and dominionize. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Worldview Media Podcast. Please visit reconstructionistradio.com to check out the other podcasts in our network and to download our free audiobooks.